Okay. Hello, everybody. Here we are at midnight time, Finnish Eastern European Daylight Time, and 9 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. We are undertaking our meditation for the WESAK full moon, which occurs really in just a few hours at 3:35:04 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So we're probably a little more than 6 hours away. We've just come back from the USR-SRI conference where quite a number of you were able to gather. That was wonderful. Both faculty and students of the Moria Federation, and also many people simply affiliated in some way with the University of the Seven Rays. We streamed that the 10 days of the conference, or at least 10 days of the conference, and 9 major days. One of them was a faculty meeting, and we had, I think, 700 plus distinct individuals who had signed in at some time or another. So we are moving towards the spreading of the knowledge of the ageless wisdom, just as Master DK would have us do. Right now, we're in the temple here in Finland at Rauhanlinna. We just had a pre-WESAK service, and now we are having our meditation, and before long, the actual WESAK full moon. I'd like to look at a couple of things, as I always do. Here is the Jafra illustration of Taurus, and also the banner which Tuya has made for all of the signs of the zodiac. And you see, I see, and when the eye is opened, all is illumined, or all is light. We can look at it either way. Venus as the exoteric ruler, and Vulcan, the downward pointing arrow in the principally the orange fiery color, both the esoteric ruler and the hierarchical ruler. We'll say more about that. Here we have complementary colors of blue and orange, and all together, interestingly, a sign of great light and of brilliant fire, as Vulcan represents the tremendous blaze that occurs in the center of the head, center of the etheric head at the time of the third initiation and even beyond, giving some tangible experience to the otherwise abstract statement, I see the greatest light. Of course, what is the greatest light? Well, we cannot touch the greatest light at all, but we can touch our own approximation of it. The light of hierarchy is ablaze. The light of Shambhala is still brighter. The light of the council within the sun still brighter. And so it goes. Intensifications of light all up the universal pyramid, as I like to think of it, until the greatest light of all really is the light of the universal logos. So far from us yet, but we are part of that light. We are units of light within that greatest of all lights, and one day we will discover it. The Jafra illustration perhaps emphasizes more the Venusian aspect rather than the Vulcanian aspect. We do find that Mars is in detriment in Taurus. We see that Mars has laid down his sword and shield. Looks like the children are playing with it. But it's not that Mars is powerless in the sign Taurus, because every detriment is really a kind of a rulership, a kind of an emphasis, and every fall is really a kind of an exaltation. But the usual power of Mars is somewhat reduced in this more earthy and slow, sometimes slow to respond sign. Yet, of course, as DK says, it can add to the general struggle for which the sign Taurus is known. That general struggle has to do with its fourth ray. It's a fourth ray sign. Other rays probably come through it, perhaps the first ray and maybe the wisdom side of the second ray. This is difficult to ascertain as yet, but certainly the fourth ray does come there. And it is a sign of great struggle towards the light. We see the lady, probably Venus, carrying the bright light, and she's riding the white bull with golden horns. And the white bull stands now for the purified powers of the personality, especially the physical body. It's changed from black to white. It's changed from earthly desire to desire for the great light. All the powers within the personality are now consecrated to the aspiration towards the greatest light possible. The high priestess is in the background. Some of these Jafra illustrations carry a lot of the Kabbalistic and seventh ray indications. Not exactly esoteric astrology, but oftentimes I think very informative. The high priestess carries the moon on her, above her, and the moon indicates the horns of the bull in a way, and it indicates the receptivity of consciousness. It's still dualistic. The horns still indicate dualism, but they are golden, and they give us a connection with the radiance of the golden sun, which stands for the heart. Taurus is not a sign of great love per se, but it is certainly a sign of great lighted wisdom. And it is intimately related to our planet, the Earth. The Earth might even be considered a kind of affiliated planet, a kind of ruler of Taurus, but it is in the illumination of the Earth which becomes the important goal of this link. It's not all cupids and doves. There is a warlike quality to Taurus. Many very aggressive individuals, either for good or for bad, are born in the sign. The charge of the bull is something to behold. It's of great power, but the bull of God rushing towards the great light, carrying the fair jewel in the forehead, which indicates the ajna center and its connection with the third eye and the opening of the third eye, which becomes possible under Taurus. So these are a few of the ideas given by the Jafra illustration. We want to turn to Francis's illustration. Let's see. This is his text, and we usually read that. But here's this beautiful illustration. He'll tell us about it. This is given in the WESAK Valley as if it were at night, and there is the amazingly geometrical configuration surrounding the Buddha. This is the corner from which the Buddha is said to appear over the great rock. I'll actually show you a picture of that because we were there 12 years ago for WESAK, and it is as the Tibetan describes. Whether the geometrical configurations made by the masters and initiates takes place below the rock or on the rock, which is of sizable size, will be something that has to be discussed. The way Leadbeater did it, he seemed to reverse the whole thing, and it is as if the Buddha is coming from the south, from India over the Himalayas, but this is not as the Tibetan describes it. Let us go back and forth here with Francis Donald's image. He says, once a year, this is a quote, once a year at the Vaisaka or WESAK Valley, the Lord Buddha, sanctioned by the Lord of the world, carries to the assembled humanity a dual stream of force, that emanating from the silent watcher supplemented by the more focalized energy of the Lord of the world. This dual energy he pours out in blessing over the people gathered at the ceremony in the Himalayas, and from them in turn it flows out to all peoples and tongues and races. From Initiation, Human and Solar, page 105. And it should be also noted, I think, that the blessing is upon hierarchy as well, and the Christ invokes that blessing for the charging, for the stimulation, for the empowerment of the hierarchy as well. Because the Buddha is now, we are led to understand, a resident of Shambhala, and it is a great sacrifice that he journeys forth from that point of tension that we call Shambhala into a lower point of tension where he can reach directly the hierarchy and the faithful who are assembled. And indeed, many people from all over Tibet and surrounding areas do come to that WESAK ceremony. Whether this occurs in the tropical zodiac or the sidereal zodiac is much to be discussed. Oftentimes, the date given for the WESAK ceremony has to do more with tropical Gemini and sidereal Taurus. However, it's quite clear from studying the Tibetan's WESAK messages that he dealt with his students of the time as if tropical Taurus were the time of the WESAK festival, and that would be from April 21st until approximately May the 20th. So in celebrating this great festival at the time of the months of April and May, we are actually following what the Tibetan himself indicated. Based on Alice Bailey's description in her unfinished autobiography, there is a possibility that the Himalayan valley depicted in this month's image is the actual setting of the WESAK festival. Therefore, visualizing this locale at the time of the WESAK full moon may help you psychically link to that great event. And I do agree with Francis here, and I do think very much that this valley, as he portrays it, and as we, well, let's take a look at it. Take a look here. This is not showing the whole valley. This is daylight. But this is the Great Rock. And it, it's quite a climb up there, so it's really large. And there's plenty of room on top, if we look at it that way, for quite a number of members of the hierarchy to be assembled, probably etherically, is my guess. Probably many of the events there are etheric and not strictly speaking physical. It is my thought, though, that the events probably take place on the rock itself, but there are different interpretations here, and I think we're dealing with a certain symbolism anyway. There is a peace pole that has been erected in front of this rock, and I guess many years now, and it conveys the great wish to forge the peace under Venus and Vulcan. So, continuing. Alice Bailey describes a large group of disciples, initiates, and masters pacing the outlines of the various sacred symbols, such as the cross, the circle with a point at the center, in accordance with his or her point in spiritual evolution. At the head of this gathering and at the foot of a large table rock in the eastern end of the valley stand three figures, of which one is the Christ. On that natural stone table is a large receptacle filled with water. At the moment of the full moon, these three figures raise their arms, and the Buddha reveals himself. And Francis here says that he has exaggerated the size of the receptacle and the figures. Otherwise, from this distant perspective, they would appear as mere dots. Well, here's how Francis is representing this. Yes, of course, we see they are greatly exaggerated, but nevertheless, you get the idea that it is especially the Christ who invokes the Buddha, and whether or not the faces of some are hidden, are bowed at the time of the Buddha's coming. The Christ, of course, sees him face to face. And we have, interesting here, I don't know if Francis has told us what these are, but three important triangular figures that sort of guard the entire process. We were there actually at the WESAK full moon. It was during the middle of the day. We were on the rock and we were facing I believe it's the northeast. It could be the northwest. I'm not exactly sure, but Alice Bailey describes it. And we did go through the process of making the obeisance at the time of the Buddha's arrival. That would have been Shambhala 2000, a very potent time, and we bowed with our head centers toward the Buddha, a very potent moment from which I'm wondering if any of us, the 8 of us that were there, have yet recovered. Anyway, there is in this image a very evocative feeling, and it is there symbolically and with degrees of literality as well. Now, here are some important statements that have been included about the Buddha and his message. The Buddha, when he achieved illumination, let in a flood of light upon life and upon our world problems. And this intelligent understanding of the causes of world distress he endeavored to formulate into the 4 noble truths, and these are: 1, that existence in this phenomenal universe, that is the 18 lower subplanets, is inseparable from suffering and from sorrow. That the cause of suffering is desire for existence in the world of phenomena. Hence we have Taurus as the sign of desire rather than as aspiration. The Buddha, being the paramount Taurus in recent history, said to be born under the full moon of Taurus, achieve enlightenment of the full moon of Taurus, and died at the same time. That cessation of suffering is brought about by eradicating all desire for existence in the universe of phenomena. And that the way to the cessation of suffering is by treading the noble eightfold path, wherein are expressed right belief, right intentions, right speech, right actions, right living, right endeavor, right mindedness or mindfulness, and right concentration. These are variously given, and it takes more than a lifetime, obviously, to work one's way through them in the proper manner. Through the message, therefore, of the Buddha, man can, for the first time, grasp the cause of his eternal discontent, of his constant distaste and dissatisfaction, and of his endless nostalgia. From the Buddha, he can learn that the way of release is to be found in detachment, dispassion, and discrimination. These are the first steps on the road to Christ. And this is from Bethlehem to Calvary. Well, many of us have studied these ideas, and the 3 or 4 or 5 Ds give us the method. Decentralization is another one of those Ds, important Ds. So it's interesting that the letter D is the 4th, having to do with the 4 lower vehicles from which a degree of detachment must be achieved. Okay, the Buddha embodies, he is the, by the way, a little bit more about that enlightenment that the Buddha achieved. It's not the common enlightenment that we look towards. We call it the illumination of Satori, enlightenment at the 3rd degree, such as St. Paul experienced in the blinding light. It's a far higher illumination. It's kind of a double of that. It is a touching of the cosmic mental plane that the Buddha, being a 3rd ray monad, achieved at his 6th initiation. That enlightenment, that illumination, which was such a huge planetary event, was the Buddha's 6th initiation. And I believe he was overshadowing the Prince Siddhartha Gautama in the same manner that the Christ, achieving his 6th initiation, was overshadowing the Master Jesus. That there's much to discuss about that, and I believe it's logical. The Buddha embodies the principle of light. He is the Lord of wisdom, which has the power to irradiate the minds of men. In that light, we shall see light. In the lesser light, we shall see the greater. Thus, he is known as the Illumined One. He has many names, including the Fully Awakened One. He and the Christ, who together form a triangle, the Sanat Kumara, have been since the WESAK festival of 1900, impressing the theme of the New World religion upon humanity, the united potency of light and love, a perfected whole, which these 2 great avatars embody. Geometry has always played a potent role in the WESAK festival. Indeed, it is a great first-ray festival, but it is a combination of the first and second ray. Shambhala is the foremost moment of the descent of the first ray upon humanity every year, but it is a mediated or moderated first ray coming through the second ray. And the Buddha himself, was a potent combination of the second and first ray. He had the first ray personality, tells the Tibetan, he had the second ray soul on the wisdom side, and because his soul was on the wisdom side of the second ray, its sub-ray was the first. So we see even on the soul level, the combination of the second and first ray were available and expressed. The great second ray Lord is called the grand or great geometrician. So geometry plays a potent role in the WESAK festival, for through the pacing of the interrelated geometric forms by those at the festival, that is the masters themselves, an act of white magic sanctioned by Sanat Kumara himself, the united blessings of the great ones, the hierarchy, is grounded on the physical plane, thus impressing humanity with the impulse of established right human relations. So thank you, Francis, for the beautiful image to which we will refer. And, I had here as well, I wonder, no, that's not it. I had here as well your other image. There it is. Yes, magnificent image from last year as well, and we see the representation of it. It looks like the great electric fire is coming from above. It looks like the Buddha is being overshadowed by Sanat Kumara, that there's a kind of a crown on his head representing the many powers he has developed. And here are the geometrical formations, so to speak, at his feet. This is a more, in a way, abstract but very evocative image of the festival. Okay, friends, I think then with this kind of preamble, we are ready to get into the meditation, which is really a warm-up meditation in a way for the actual moment of the full moon that we will be celebrating together. And, thousands and thousands are celebrating at this time. And during this 12-hour period, we are indeed in the day of safeguarding, of receiving and holding, 12 hours before, 12 hours afterwards. And in his time, and when he was working with his students, the Master DK said he would be very alert towards their thought and aspiration during the 12 hours preceding the actual full moon. So we can certainly act as if our thoughts ascend to the great ones, and especially here Master DK, who takes kind of a guardianship over the aspirants who have been inspired from his books. He is one who trains, as we know, aspirants for initiation, and that's for the first 3 initiations. So we are striving as individuals, we are striving as a group, and we are applying, as Master Moria said, fiery striving. The heights of aspiration are reached in the sign Taurus, and although this may not be a common thought, heights of dedicated aspiration towards the light are reached at this time in Taurus. And the great stillness is descending over humanity, especially over those who can be aware of it. It's a kind of stillness in which all things can be seen lucidly in the light, and the powers of glamour and the powers of illusion and even the powers of Maya are subdued. So if we ever hope to achieve clarity of sight, considering the great light of Taurus and the 5th ray that comes through Venus, this is what we must do. This is the time for us to achieve that lucidity. Okay, so let us then, we've been passing through the days of preparation, which involve all of them, detachment and renunciation, and then 3 days before, confidence, it's a physical attitude. Aspiration, an emotional astral attitude. Dedication, the mental attitude. And for the 3 days following, we register all we have touched. Under registration, we have a sense of expectancy, which is related to the sentient vehicle. And finally, a confirmed belief that all that has transpired really has transpired, and it can be brought into manifestation. So here we are, spread all over the world, but we're coming together in soul. Our personal presence to each other makes not much difference. What does make a difference is that we be in the same chamber of consciousness in terms of our soul, in terms of our sentiency. So let us breathe regularly, rhythmically, allowing the breath to help bring our vehicles into a state of alert, poise, and tranquility. And we abstract ourselves, our true selves. We are a point of being consciousness, and we abstract from our perception of the outer world mediated by the senses, from sentiency, our feeling nature, and from the many thoughts and mental operations of our lower mind. We abstract. And realize ourselves to be the soul in incarnation, the observer, who finally, in fact, is the monad itself. We, the jiva, are an extension of the point of life, which is the monad. And we find ourselves in various fields and atmospheres, in various dimensions, but we observe them as the observer, the point of being consciousness. We can feel ourselves coming together in consciousness, coming together in the sense of being, and we are merging into a deep sense of the group soul. Wherever we are, some 75 of us right now, I think, we are touching each other in sentiency, in consciousness, in soul. We are coming together as one unit of consciousness. We are even coming together as one being. In the one being that includes all beings, I am the life, and in that life, all little lives remain. So space is overcome, omnipresence in one of its earlier phases is realized, and we are within each other's presence extending that presence and that consciousness out to the men and women of goodwill, the core of which is the new group of world servers, uniting with the many points of light around the globe. Somehow touching them, connected to them, at one with them, unified with them. And finally extending our sense of sentiency, our sense of the subtle touch, to embrace every human being as a soul on this planet, whether in the body or out of the body. Billions of us, but all of us somehow one thing, the one soul of humanity, with many different apertures through which sentiency is felt. But there is one being behind and within the many beings, the one soul of humanity. And with that soul, we are one. This we will eventually realize. So it turns out, and if we could only really feel this and know this to be the fact, there is no my soul or thy soul, no unbridgeable ring past knots, but only one being, one soul. And as is said in the great second ray mantra, naught is but me. Naught is but me. If we could take that one sentence and work it for the rest of our lives until realization of it were full and pure and complete, then we would have done much. Naught is but me. We are gathered in soul upon the mental plane, imagining a point of group mental tension, the group mental unit, the fusion of all the mental units of all participants. We gathered at a point of tension, mental tension to be illuminated by the soul and by higher energy fields. As the Tibetan said, we have to learn to hold several points of tension at the same time and have a consciousness which is aware on several levels at the same time, all held with clarity. So we want to strengthen that point of group mental tension, and we can do this via our soul ray, each of us feeding in a certain quality of energy into the group point of mental tension. The first ray, souls, the will to initiate. Second ray, will to unify. Third ray, will to evolve, develop. Fourth ray, will to harmonize. Fifth ray, will to act. Sixth ray, will to cause. Seventh ray, will to expression. So the seven colors of will flow into the mental unit, making it a launching point for the group antikarana at a sufficient point of group mental tension. And from that point of group mental tension, we as if draw up all of the powers of the group personality, physical, etheric, astral, all mental powers, into the point of focus, of extreme focus, on the fourth subplane of the mental plane. And we feel our mental intensity reinforced by soul will. And holding that point of mental tension, we use our creative imagination to contribute to the group rainbow bridge our two colors, the color of our soul and personality rays, or the color indigo, if these are not known, as the entire group Antakarana will be tinted by the color indigo, the great indigo of our second ray solar system. So we focus first on our own Antakarana, seeing it as if arising from the lower man, imagined forth in and through the tension we have generated, rising upward in the colors of red for the first ray, indigo for the second, green for the third, yellow for the fourth, orange for the fifth, silvery rose for the sixth, and violet for the seventh. Our two colors until we feel them rising upward or tending inward towards the center of the sphere, depending on how you wish to visualize, and touching on the way the monastic permanent atom of the abstract mind, the Buddhic permanent atom of the plane of harmony and pure reason, the atomic permanent atom of the plane of spiritual will. With each imaginative touch, the Antakarana intensifying in its power, and finally into the symbolic blue-white diamond representing the monad, Shambhala, the will, and at the heart of it, pure being. Visualize your colors. And intensify the group Antakarana through the intensification of your own colors, the higher aspects of the personality ray blended with the soul, color and ray, all merging cone-like in the blue-white diamond, or if you prefer at the center of the sphere, but merging, touching the great sources, activating responsiveness to the higher ethers, you can feel the energy growing. And whatever we think or realize will be stimulated by these higher energies. We will imagine from the point of group mental tension a line of pure radiant light, perhaps tinged slightly blue, racing across the Antakarana until it anchors itself in the blue-white diamond, having passed through the triadal vehicles and their permanent atoms. And we will think to ourselves the second ray word of power, I see the greatest light. And we will sound the Om with our voices on the blue note G, but think to ourselves, I see the greatest light. This we will do 3 times. Oh. Om. I see the greatest light. And at this time of supreme light, we are at least imaginatively touching those sources of inspiration where the hierarchy itself is focused, Buddhically and ethnically. And we are as if in the presence of the lodge of masters who may in their etheric vehicles, projected via Maya Virupas, be gathered in some hours in the WESAK Valley, making a tangible presence. But for the moment we imagine their true soul presence, which is triadal, planetary, non-local, intense, and we, their students, in their presence, offering ourselves as outposts of their consciousness, willing to be vitalized spiritually by their presence. We offer them our salutations, which is an act of solidarity, of cooperation, of recognition of them for the high energy centers that they are, that they represent, along their ray line, occult recognition of their presence and potency and their ashramic will to redeem the world, a will with which we seek to cooperate. And so, first we will salute, and we don't often do this, Buddha, the Lord of Light and of Wisdom. Salutations to the Buddha, the Lord of Light, the Lord of Wisdom. Salutations to the Christ, the Master of all masters, the teacher alike of angels and of men, the world Savior. Salutations to the triangle of masters with whom we work most closely. These are the ones who came before hierarchy to ask permission to bring the ageless wisdom closer to humanity. These are group salutations, Salutations to the Master Moria, the head of all esoteric schools and organizations, the one who strengthens all disciples. Salutations to the Master Kurumi, whose ashram is responsible for the major impulse of the reappearance of the Christ, the future Christ of the age of Capricorn. Salutations to the Master Jwal Kul, the Master who is the messenger of the hierarchy, bringing the blue books to humanity, the one who trains aspirants for initiation. Salutations to your own Master as you conceive him to be or know him to be. Salutations to the entire spiritual hierarchy of our planet, the Chohans and the Masters of the 7 ashrams as the great ashram of Sanat Kumara. And using your creative imagination, raise your thought towards that greatest of all points of tension, for us at least, the bright center lying far ahead, the center where the will of God is known, and with deepest reverence and in all humility, attempt, identify it as a group soul and being, to attune to the all-pervading presence of Sanat Kumara, standing as it were at the center of Shambhala. And when you have thus attuned, sound a long and silent inner Om, feeling the group imbued with his energy. and humanity, all the world, imbued with his energy of planetary purpose. And this is the alignment in which we work. Shambhala, the great center through which the energies of the constellations and the planets enter our planetary sphere under the law of assembly, especially at these full moon opportunities. So here we are as a group, aligned upwardly with the great center of Shambhala, at least imaginatively, and with the hierarchy and its focus on the cosmic ethers, standing as a group soul, as a group presence, imagining ourselves coming together at a point. We are a point of potency, of love, of light. Space matters not. We are a point of potency, of love, of light. All of us. And the familiar golden path stretches out before us toward the indigo sphere, the indigo sun, where the consciousness of our guide, Master DK, will be found ready to blend and merge with ours as we begin our upward ascent into the presence of the available energies. So here we are, a point of light, of love, of power, upon the golden path, which shortens and shortens as we travel with it, the golden path, shortening, and merging and absorbed in the indigo sphere, we together within the indigo sphere, where we sense imaginatively the presence and consciousness of Master DK, offering ourselves as a group as an outpost of his consciousness, that it may pervade and substand and infuse our own, so that as we encounter these higher energies, they may make a deeper impact upon us, and we may achieve as a group a deeper understanding. And we then begin to imaginatively raise or really intensify our consciousness until it can touch the streams of energy coming through the two planetary rulers of the constellation Taurus, Venus, the exoteric ruler, conveying the light and love of the soul. Words so often used, light and love, but think what it means. The light and love of the soul, the great planet of the soul, the most luminous planet for us. So brilliant in the night sky, even as the moon is brilliant now, being so close to the Earth, reflecting the solar orb, Venus, and we will turn our attention to Vulcan as well, which is both the esoteric and hierarchical ruler, conveying both the will of the soul, the grip of the soul, power of the soul, but hierarchically the greater spiritual will of the atmic plane, which is the first aspect of the monad. Will, reflecting the will of the monad, which reflects the will of the planetary logos, which reflects the will of the solar logos, and on it goes. DK educating us in the will. No better time than at this WESAK festival, which touches Shambhala more than any other festival. So, as if with Master DK's consciousness infused in our own, we will ponder then on the power of Venus in relation to Taurus, Venus conveying the beauteous light of the soul, the light of the solar angel, that great being who was a member of the council chamber of the sun, who with a small fraction of his illumination, love, and power infuses our egoic nature on the higher mental plane, Venus illuminating the consciousness with love, wisdom, and stimulating higher manas so that it may be sensitive to the intuition, to the buddhi, to pure reason, to the great harmony. Venus, the monad of the sixth ray of devotion and of love wisdom, working through its fifth ray soul to bring what for us is a portion of the greatest light, at least the light sublime, the light supernal, found at the transfiguration on the mountain top, as we truly focus our attention within the soul, within the ego, on the higher mental plane. And Venus, especially attuned to the second subplane of the higher mental plane, whereon our causal body, the causal body of meditators like ourselves, should now be found. Venus. Venus is always present, infusing the earth, teaching the earth, uplifting the earth, even as our soul infuses, teaches, and uplifts the lower human being. Venus and Taurus, the ajna center is stimulated, connected with the third eye in the center of the etheric head, providing the vehicle of light and love for the divine will, implicate within the Venusian field. We breathe Venus into our energy system. Is it the orange of the fifth ray? Is it the rose of the sixth? Is it the indigo blue of its ultimate monadic ray, the second? It will give us the power to live consciously as a soul, making our nature love. And our method, inclusiveness. The Venus of which Christ is the great representative, Venus, the student of Sirius, even as in some lesser measure our planet is as well. The solar Sirian light stored in Venus and reaching us from the cosmic mental plane via the indwelling solar angel, substanding, pouring through the group, the Venusian stream of energy, flooding our group, flooding our groups, the new group of world servers, the men and women of goodwill, eventually all of humanity. Where are we as a group most in need of the Venusian qualities? Let us see them within the group, helping the group, civilizing the group, bringing soul magnetism into the group. We will want to carry Venus these days and to express it as we visualize all the good that it does for our group and groups. We will sound the note A, associated in the spectrum with the color indigo, and then the G, associated with the profound second ray. As a matter of fact, I think we will have three soundings. The A for the fifth ray, the A flat for the sixth, and the G for the second ray. Let us carry Venus with us, but we will now move to the power of Vulcan, a still invisible planet, though a dense planet, the Tibetan tells us, to be discovered when finally humanity develops enough spiritual will to stand for the higher principles. In terms of the need, this standing is imminent. So Vulcan, the downward pointing arrow, conceived in orangey red, the will of the soul to grip the personality and bend that personality to its will, the will of the soul, the grip, the molding power of Vulcan to compel obedience to the spiritual will as it is mediated through the sacrifice petals, through the jewel and the lotus, from the atmic plane and from higher sources still, the pressure of the soul, the downward irresistible pressure, unlike the magnetism of Venus, compelling the disciple within the personality to obey, spiritual obedience, forging the links, the bonds between soul and personality, inseparable. The pressure of all jewels within all chakras upon the surrounding area of the body, the pressure of the center, that pressure, if followed, will lead to accomplishment, solidarity, firmness, the absorption of first-rate qualities into the mechanism, and the revelation of the light of matter long concealed, the dark light of matter flaming into blinding brilliance under the pressure of Vulcan. The pressure upon the group to obey the will of the soul and to sacrifice accordingly, setting all things aside so that the higher will may be accomplished. Rare to find, but necessary. But not only is Vulcan the esoteric ruler, but also the hierarchical ruler, connected with a great hierarchy on the fifth subplane of the cosmic astral plane, bringing the end of glamour in a cosmic sense and a great illumination associated with the number 5. A great light through Vulcan as desire gives place to will. So at least from the atmic plane, which we can somewhat imagine, it is the spiritual will descending, driving us persistently in our quest towards the greatest light, despite all obstacles to enlightenment, the shock of enlightenment. The Zen master carries his staff. He hits the student. Why? The shock of enlightenment. The shock of the blinding will. Just as St. Paul was blinded, falling from his horse, we are told, under the pressure of the blinding light, preparing to take the third initiation over a number of years, surprised by the shock of enlightenment, on the road to Damascus. From the atmic plane whereon the masters can focus their consciousness, the spiritual will descends. Through the jewel in the lotus, through the sacrifice petals, through the jewel in the highest head center which is associated with the atmic plane, the pressure of the light, so that in that light we may see light. And that uncompromising pressure must enter the group. Even though we may not think ourselves ready for it, it must enter the group, subduing the lesser lights, substituting a greater light for the lesser lights, fusing with Venus as the head fuses with the Ajna center, bringing a great marriage in the heavens, revealing the light sublime, the supernal light, the power of the monad through Vulcan, the power of the soul through Venus. Feel that, as if in the group, making its demand that the group strive for a greater intensity of light. The great invocation is said to be an ancient mantra for will and light, a word of power, will and light. This is what we get with these two planets, with love suffusing the whole at this brightest time of the year, the unfettered light of Shambhala, the love of the soul, conquering of the lower human being. Let the group be empowered by will and light. And as we see this happening, and we see our group needs being met by this spiritual will which carries the great luminosity of Shambhala, the true needed light within the group, we will use the solar note. We will use the note that Blavatsky assigned to the sun. It is a D. It's a first ray note. Vulcan and the sun being one. And we can visualize this in the red-orange color. The group absorbing this Vulcanian power. Let us sound 3 times. Venus and Vulcan, luminous, Ajna and head united, all jewels united. The will entering the group, the great light which reveals the will of Shambhala. to the group, and only to the group, really. The lower individual cannot approach this. The group must approach. So this is our alignment, which takes us to the heart of the sun, to the great solar orb, to the God of love, wisdom, underlying all that transpires within his sphere, his solar system and his vehicles, the second ray, personality, the second ray, soul, probably the fourth ray monad yielding to a second ray monad eventually of our solar logos at this time, 222, the great love wisdom, immersed in a greater indigo. A great love entering our hearts, magnetism, fusion, solar unity. And certainly in our solar system, our solar logos is the source for us of the greatest light. One day to see the greatest light of the solar logos. Our solar god, Vulcan, Venus, the earth, the monad, the soul, the disciple. But now onward towards the constellation Taurus, prominent at this time of the Venus transit across the sun. The sun, as it were, within the horns of the bull, and Venus transiting it across the face of the sun. The constellation Taurus. It's a powerful star Aldebaran, the eye of the bull, and behind it, the very center of the entire cosmos system in which we live, the Pleiades, aligned at this time with respect to our solar system, aligned with Taurus. And we see then in Taurus, we imagine, the penetrating light of the path. This is a beam of light streaming forth from the point in Aries and revealing the area of light control. Control, Vulcan. Control by the light. Penetrating what? Certainly penetrating the flux and disorder of Maya, the distortion of glamour, the fragmentation of illusion, penetrating all that. Penetrating eventually the disk of golden light, which the angel of the presence puts forth, penetrating beyond and into the triadal sphere, penetrating eventually into the area of the monad, which reveals microcosmically the greatest light, the penetrating light of the path. And always a greater light will subdue the lesser lights encountered on the way. To tread the path is not casual. It requires the will to penetrate through every barrier we encounter, to move from lesser light to greater light. Penetration as an act of intensification of the point of tension. And we open ourselves then to the feel, the touch of the energy quality of the constellation Taurus, mediated to us through the sign Taurus, attempting to realize its profound relationship to the fourth ray of harmony through conflict, the great struggle towards the light, reaching us via Venus and Vulcan, merging with the first and the fifth rays of Venus and Vulcan, with beauty thou hast the light, says Master Moria, beauty revealing the light, the fourth ray revealing the second. And we are entering a lighted time of the new Renaissance. We are told, if all goes well, we do not succumb to the darkness of Taurus. If all goes well, entering into the light of beauty in the coming decades. And finally, to realize how the forces of enlightenment are released at this time, bringing to us some measure of revelation of the purpose and the plan of our planetary logos, which can and will illumine human consciousness. Not the full plan, not the full purpose. These are the prerogatives of the masters and those even higher, but some measure of realization of the plan for humanity, reinforced by the divine purpose of the planetary logos, the forces of enlightenment now available. Feel their presence, high beings that they are, shambolic beings that they are. Feel them penetrating the ethers of our nature, stimulating the pineal gland and the ethers surrounding it, so that the light in the head may be functional and all may be revealed as light, which scientifically it is. All form condensation of light. We are in the intensifying light, ever brighter, offering tremendous stimulus to all aspirants and disciples, and especially those that approach in group formation, a tremendous downflow, inflow, to be carried throughout the year at this high point of spiritual stimulation. The light is tangible. It's not imaginary. It's present. It has weight. It is substantial. Spending these days in the light, as the light, identifying with Hermes, with Buddha, with Christ, as they all said, identifying as light, I am the light of the world. And this is the time to realize that fact at this high point of spiritual stimulation during the zodiacal year. The great light. And so we segue then into the mantram for the sign constellation Taurus. I see. And when the eye is opened, all is light. I see. And when the eye is opened, all is light. The blue eye, the single eye, the Shiva eye, the revealer of synthesis in the light. I see. When the eye is opened, all is light. There is but one light, the all-pervading substantial light, of which all forms are precipitations. We are together in the light. We are the light. All that we call form, dense or subtle, is of the light. We are the light of the world. We are the form in which all forms are merged. Use the light within you to see a still greater light. In that light we shall see light. I see. And when the eye is opened, that area of the etheric brain around the pineal gland, when the eye is opened, all is light. All is illumined. Down from the blue-white diamond, all the way to the permanent atoms, to the jewel in the lotus, anchoring in the jewel in the head and descending into the center of the head. The luminosity comes, and we share it together. Within the fire of mind, within the head's clear light, as if there is but one jewel in the head centers of us all, and that jewel is bright with the descent of monadic, atmic, egoic light. And we, as a group, are an outpost of the unfettered enlightenment of Shambhala. Working in the intensifying light to bring light to the world, so that all obscurity may flee before us, all maya, all glamour, all illusion giving way before the great substantial light, rooted in Shambhala and beyond. I see. And when the eye is opened, all is light. Every form we see dissolves as light. Not a form on which you can focus, but that it is light itself. those you know, places you go, all objects of nature, capable of dissolving into the one light. From the Pleiades, in a way the very jewel in the head center of the one about whom naught may be said. Through the little bear, considered as the ajna center of the great deity, entering through Taurus, the sign of great light, the constellation of great light, and through our solar god, touching his monadic and soul nature, the central spiritual sun, the heart of the sun, through Vulcan, through Venus, through Shambhala of the earth, through the monad, through the soul, anchoring in all the jewels of all the chakras, but especially of the ajna and the head center, and making a triangle with the center within the head, the etheric center. The great light descends. For us, the greatest light. Substance to be used, light to be employed. The dark light of matter raised to luminosity. Lighter, more luminous human beings, groups, humanity. The great light descending into humanity where there are so many difficulties. Just imagine where the great light is needed. Look out into the world. Where is this great light, representing the greatest light? The light of Taurus and all of its emissaries, even as Taurus is an emissary of still greater sources. Where can we apply the great light? Look for a trouble spot where there is darkness. And as a group, focus the light we have touched, dispelling the darkness, raising it into light. How well we should see now the distinction between darkness and light when under the influence of this greatest light. The sinuous line between good and evil should be revealed, and where there is evil and darkness and ignorance, the great light can be applied. And the forces of enlightenment can pour in at this time. Education, instead of weaponry, this is what the Tibetan demanded. If humanity would be saved, education. Billions and billions into enlightenment, education, serving the light. And we will sound on the note of the second ray, the most luminous type of soul, the second ray. We will sound the Om, pouring the forces of enlightenment into where they are most needed upon the earth. 3 times. The pure light of the Buddhic flame, conveying pure reason, inclusive reason, blending with the 4th ray that represents Mercury in its relation to Taurus, the illumining intuition coming into the dense concrete mind of humanity, revealing the light of the transcendental mind, the portal to the greatest light. Let us live in the light, express the light. These days, these next days, let us receive the light, express, pour forth the light. May illumination characterize everything we think, we say, we do. The strength of the group is ours. The light of the ashrams are ours. And even some tiny thread, strand of the greatest light of Shambhala is ours. The outposts of the unfettered enlightenment of Shambhala. We can do this now, more illumined than ever before, most illumined at this time. Distributors of the light, at this high point of spiritual inspiration for the year, the luminosity of Taurus, bringing light to our solar system and intense light to Shambhala and eventually to us, carriers of the light. The second ray, the ray of light-bearing influence. All of us light carriers, no matter what our ray may be, all of us light carriers, light bearers, lifting the ignorance of humanity, allowing humanity to see in the light, ending illusion, glamour, and Maya. And so we have about 5 hours, a little less, before the full moon. Let us intensify the light, whether awake or asleep, intensify the light. And as we sound the great invocation together, let it be within the great light. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. may Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Friends, just a little while to go. About 4 hours and 40 minutes before our actual full moon. I want to thank everybody that has been here with us. I know it's late for some, especially here in Europe, but you'll be getting up early, won't you, shortly? So the only approach now is to simply intensify the alignment so that when the actual full moon comes in our 8 minutes of silence, the Buddha being the guardian, Mercury, he is Mercury, the guardian of the 8th gate, which is Scorpio. We will be ready to receive the maximum intensification of the descending energy as we can, and to distribute it individually and in group form over the next days and really over the next years. Years is good, but this year for sure. So we will sign off now on our webinar, and hopefully, well, there's not much time, but make this meditation available to you once it's converted and ready, and we'll send it out to you. And you can use it as you wish, and over the next several days, as we seek to identify with the available energies and to distribute them. So, good night, good day, good morning, whatever it is, and we'll see you in meditation in another 4 hours and a half or so, probably before that.